But
How's
did
it
it
going,
not
Metal?
update the title?
Well, yeah, I need to go over and do that. I usually do it after we stream, just because it's easier.
Yeah.
Because I've been just streaming off of my account because I've got way more followers, and so that way if people wanna, some people show up and it's just like, hey, who are you interviewing tonight, Reese? Oh, I'm just talking.
Yeah.
I'm interviewing myself. So, what have you been up to these days, man?
Oh, well, I actually have it in front of me. I just started working on the next page of the web comic, which is the first time I got to do this in a while, because I've been working on assets for a RPG that I've been running over on Cross Comics channel.
Right. I need to shoot him a message sometime, Rick, because he was talking about coming on to talk about Christianity and comics, and I'm wanting to do December 3rd a over on my Thursday, my matriarchy show. I was wanting to do a whatever the heck it's called. Oh well, an Advent show since Christmas season kicking off.
Counting down.
Yeah. So that seemed like a reasonable thing to jump on there. So I thought, hey, why not?
Yeah. Sounds fun.
Yeah, I have a Brennan, I can't remember his last name, who's on last week, was talking about it. He's just like, we should do this. It'd be great. Yeah, okay, that's fine. I have no problem with this. So, but I need to get around and actually contact Rick, and I haven't done that yet because I'm a slacker.
Oh well, I'll be in contact with him immediately after we're done here. Because I hop from your show over to his on Tuesdays. Actually, he's in the chat that I'm in right now.
Oh,
because the RPG chat, we're trying to settle things up. The last episode that we did, this session, was kind of a hot mess, as you kind of expect to happen in those settings. We're just trying to like fluff that out.
They're trying to make it work because you guys are basically inventing it, yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily say that. It is a pre-made system that we're using, but the campaign itself is entirely homebrew.
Mm-hmm. I never played through an organized campaign, a D&D campaign, until my kids started learning. Me and the guys, we just make it up ourselves.
Yeah.
None of us were there very interested in learning about like the Neverwinter geography or any of the history they had in that. We're just like, generic Fantasyland, go.
Yeah. Well, that's usually what I did when I was first learning, because I'm usually the game master role. That's just the one I prefer, being the game master. That probably is the writer in me, and because of that, I thought the best way to learn to play the game would be to run through like a starter kit the first time that I did it, because it would teach you how to become a dungeon master and everything. But since then, for the most part, I've ran homebrew campaigns where we throw the lore to the wind and I'll just make stuff up. So it's usually in a world that I created for that campaign with its own history and stuff like that.
So seriously, how many universes have you created?
Oh, that's a tough question. I don't even know if I've kept count. Because for my literature, it's all the same universe. But if we count the fact that I've DM'd and I've ran games and stuff like that for other people, or I've done like what is long-term but effectively improvised stuff, 30, because all of those are just their own separate disconnected things.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. See, I was thinking that I was feeling pretty impressive with about a dozen, but that's now I'm a little embarrassed.
It's okay. Most of them I can't even remember. They're just lost to history.
Yeah. No, I get that too. part of it for me is it's just like one of those things where I like to build things out so much that, like, you know, if I have an idea, it is really rare that it doesn't fit within the confines of our Ideal Comics universe, you know? So when I was, the first comic universe I developed when I was in high school was I wanted to do like Christian comics, right?
Yeah.
That were, because, you know, I love Jesus, right? And I think that comics can be a great tool. I think all storytelling is a great tool to talk about immortal truths. And so I thought, hey, comics are a great medium to kind of discuss on that. And I don't dissuade that at this point, but I had very much of a blatantly Christian universe that I developed to tackle, questions of culture and about all the kind of stuff. But I was also 14.
Yeah.
It was a little on the nose. And but yeah, that was like 14, 15. I've got all the stuff to it still, and it was I don't dislike it looking back at it, but it just, you know, it's a little on the nose.
Like, I'm older, I could do way better now.
Now, it's not Bible Man on the nose. I would like to point that out. But it's have you ever I don't know if you grew up in the church at all.
Oh yeah, I did.
Did you ever read the Butter Churn Gang?
No, I did not.
It was a series of Christian youth YA and youth novels that was written in the 50s. Or no, it was Buttercream, not Butter Churn, Buttercream. Yeah. And it was about an unofficial club of boys in like this semi-rural, maybe the South, unstated area. Hey, the Bunderdome. I don't know which one you are, but thanks for tuning in. Hey, we're a little short. If you happen to want to jump on, whoever you are, I can DM you the link if you want to, because we're just bullshitting.
Yeah. Bunderdome was just live too. I'm guessing the
show. Oh yeah. It was Mark's. Mark was talking about scripting and editing, and it was really fun. I was tuned into that.
Oh man, I should have watched it.
Yeah, go back. It's great.
Yeah, I'll rewatch it. Yeah. I'll add it to my. Actually, before I forget, I'll go and add it to my watch later list. Let me go find
it. The Buttercream Gang was about this like group of kids who in their own little. Okay, Tim is just tuning in. He doesn't want to be on. Fine.
That's fine.
Oh, although Tim, I need to get a hold of you because in December I want you guys to come by at some point. I got to figure it out, but anyway, Buttercream Gang. It's a bunch of kids in this like rural, semi-rural area, who just like do good deeds for their neighbors and deal with their personal struggles, and it's a little drama, a little comedy, and it's super inspirational. But it makes all of the like Mayberry kind of assumptions about a Christian society. Yeah. And so it talks about faith stuff and it talks about conversion, but it's like it's not super heavy, but it's very on the nose. So that's kind of what I was trying to do with my first superhero universe, was something that just, presumes all of the assumptions and is open into the discussion of the topics, and is just fanciful enough to be very Baptist, but also people that fly,
Yeah.
Because I grew up in independent Bible churches, which for those of you who might not know, an independent Bible church is just a Baptist church that doesn't want to be part of the conference.
The doctrine like a non-denominational Baptist church.
Exactly. The doctrine is virtually identical to to a lot of Southern Baptists. So
yeah.
But yeah, so that's what I joke.
Kind of like it's like a metal genre that doesn't want to be part of like death metal, so they just make their own name and split.
Yeah, exactly. We're not a death metal band. We just sound exactly like
a death metal band.
Okay. Okay, Salmon. That's fine. Sure. You're not just a metal version of the Misfits. That's okay.
What's funny too is I'm acutely aware of this because when growing up, I lived on like the back or the backside of a neighborhood. So the main road went right past my backyard.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other side used to be basically wooded area. And then they decided to tear it down because they wanted to put a district of churches, like 3 or 4 different churches went up on that road back to back, and 2 of them next to each other. One is a Bible church like that, and right next to it is a Baptist church.
Oh, goodness sakes.
And you wouldn't believe, because sometimes I'd like to watch as things are filing out at the end of the services, because I could just look over my back fence. The looks that they would give each other, despite basically believing the exact same things.
Oh, yeah, especially next to each other. Now, I mean, yeah, I don't know. That's crazy. Well, then, I mean, when you get to it, if you really spend the time to really break it down, like most, oh, hey, it's Nasser. How's it going, man?
Nasser, cool.
For most people, the things that, like, I want to say most, but a lot of different Christian denominations. Tim Moore says no alert, no homepage, and no subscribe feed. I only saw this because it came across on Facebook. Are ready for the Great Reset? Tim asks. I am not, but I'm
armed to the teeth, so sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It's a crazy thing. What I was saying is that a lot of Christian denominations have so much in common that, like, the amount we fight is just kind of stupid anyway.
It's like a 98% overlap.
Well, it's maybe pretty close.
99.
I mean, yeah. Even if you really like, oh, hey, Lonnie is going to be Lonnie Webb. He's going to be my guest on Thursday.
Oh, cool.
I've known the guy for a while, and the guy I was going to have on bailed, and I noticed that Lonnie was crowdfunding a comic that looks fun. So I said, dude, I'm Shia Guest. Do you want to show up? And he says, okay. So we've not spoken before. We've just direct messaged and stuff. So yeah, you got to check up on it. Oh, Nasser asks, what is the Great Reset? Okay. So the Great Reset is a conspiracy theory that's almost certainly correct. That the nations around the world, many of the leaders of these nations and international corporations, want to make it easy to govern and rule everyone by having the same legal codes that go up everywhere. And it's sort of like saying if the EU was a shadow government that ran everything, that's what it is. So, yeah. And interesting little side note, I don't know to add to the conspiracy or not, but for a long time, for about 15, 20 years, townships and counties across the country have been adapting law from I've adapting into city codes and stuff, legal statutes that are being written up in Brussels to determine the size of the streets and what counts as garbage day and all kinds of stuff. And I mean, it was, and they've actually purchased packages of these things to try to make it easier to get insurance for your township or whatever. And so there's some sense to it, but it's also like the people aren't actually voting policies in. They're just making it up as they go. So
yeah.
So and then once you fall in line with this particular thing and with these particular codes and you get this particular kind of insurance, then it's really hard to get other kinds of insurance for your town if you have, like, city festivals or whatever else. So it is so, like, with this, it's sort of it's the merge, it's the intersection of crony capitalism and socialism, which are, if you want to get into government theory, are virtually the same thing. Anyway, it's exactly.
It's exactly this type of stuff is why even as a young kid, I always saw Star Trek as like a dystopian nightmare.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And Tim is exactly right. The end of Western nation sovereignty. That's true, because it's really hard to opt out. That's even the situation with Brexit, right? Britain was like, we're opting out of the EU, we're doing our own thing, and like they're like a year and a half past when they were supposed to like cut the cord, and people are dragging their feet, and they're like, well, how will we ever trade? But we're Europeans first. And I'm like, dude, you're not even in the continent. Just flip them the bird and walk on.
You're barely Europeans.
You're barely Europeans. It's just like, and that's one of those things where it comes back to like, all of the side note, all of the problems, like the problems we have with our various cultures and race issues and identity issues here in America. Like the reason all of the European people get along now is because we all gave up our old crap when we came here, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's the Irish community and the Polish community and the Czech community and the Scottish community and the Welsh community, and sure, we have a little different flavors. We use different amounts of cumin in our cooking, whatever, right? But the fact is, like, none of that none of that crap matters, right? So here's a deep cut if you don't know Scottish history, but here, McDonald's and Campbell's get along just fine.
Yeah, which is not the case across the pond.
No, it's not. No, it's
at
not.
all. Well, here's my name isn't a Bane because I'm from McCraw, or as they pronounce it, McGrath here. And,
right.
We're a very hated people back over because of the things we've done. But here, nobody cares.
No. Yeah. Well, and
we didn't raid and pillage our own people and then wrote differently in the history books. No, that never happened.
Or, we had the Welsh. We had our entire governmental system subverted. Our lands taken, our titles taken. The royal house of the royal arms of the House of Deheubarth, the kings of the South, is now held by some dude in England. Right?
Yeah. Well, the same thing happened to mine. Because McCraw was one of the noble clans. Craw was the first cousin of the first Ulrich king of Ireland.
Okay.
And it was going to be between either of them. Right? It was either O'Brien or him, based on the lineage, and it went to O'Brien. And no, there was probably a fight about it back then, but it's not really recorded. So as far as anybody knows, it was a very peaceful transition.
Yeah, that's like the dissolution of the Southern Welsh kingdom was peaceful too, because the last two heirs disappeared from history as far as anyone knows. they were in the Tower of London for a couple of years, and then no one ever heard from them ever again.
Yeah.
So the options are either they were killed in the tower, but that wasn't recorded, or they were smuggled away, and then that was happening at the same time that the last names were being instituted, and then they were incorporated into the underclasses. So who knows? So. Lonnie says, "Damn the Frasers," but I don't know why. Yeah, that's a really good thing. I think I remember reading that why, actually, the McLeods and Frasers, but I don't remember anymore. It's been a really long time. It's been probably 6 years since I read that, and I didn't keep up on it, so it didn't stay sharp in my mind. But yeah, so I mean, when part of the beauty of America is that the old world doesn't matter anymore because we're making something new. So we look at all of this reset stuff, and Tim Lim says it's not a theory. They reported on it in Time, and I think Time
that actually would make it more of a theory, because theories are more than like law. Most conspiracies are hypotheses. This is actually kind of a theory.
Yeah, there you go. It has some evidence behind it. Yeah. Well, and the funny thing about that too is that Time reported on it, and then the day before, the day after, the Ken doll that runs Canada, Trudeau, that's his name. Yeah. He went off in this big speech that said, "Hey, Hey, it's the reset, everybody. Aren't we excited? Shh, shh, don't talk about the reset. The thing about this that bothers me the most, I will tell you completely honestly, is here I am trying to write a comic book, right? A webcomic / comic book universe where,
Yeah,
conspiracy is like an intrinsic underlying part of it. Spoiler alert. And like, by the time I'm done, nobody will care because all of the things, the most crazy thing that I invented 15 years ago is suddenly on the front page of every paper.
Oh, actually, here's a funny thing too. Because Webb brought up McCoy's. We were talking
Yeah.
about have a complex ancestry. I have family that comes from the West Virginia area. I even
Okay.
actually own property up there, several acres of land that will be mine whenever my dad passes. And I actually have relative history going back to both the Hatfields and the McCoys.
Yeah, that was actually
Yeah,
really
so my blood hates each other.
Mhm. Well, no, and that's actually pretty common, believe it or
Yeah,
not. The
yeah,
Hatfields and McCoys intermarried several times, and
several.
then
Yeah,
like there was a whole like a red wedding scenario that happened. I
yeah.
believe at one point, like a wedding was actually interrupted because they married the wrong member of the wrong clan, and it was
Yeah.
like that. Yeah. Oh, Lonnie says the news is crazier than what I have written. Well, Lonnie, I've read some of what you've written with Through, and you're right. He did a comic called Through that's about like a dimension hopping, a guy that builds a machine that can go between dimensions, and it's fun, really fun stuff. But that's not the bookie's crowdfunding. That's one that was on the web a while ago. But
Yeah. Well, you know what the scary part is almost how Starship Troopers started.
Mhm.
This whole
What?
The reset thing.
Oh
And
yeah,
kind of like this crony corporatism, socialism being demanded by science leading the way, and weak liberalism and stuff like that is like exactly the history of Starship Troopers before it fell. Manly men had to come and overthrow it and basically rebuild this federation that completely separated the government from capital systems, but still left both in place.
Well, and here's the hilarious thing about all this too. What's going on like right now? I'm going to get a little political since I'm the only one here from the company. So, for the record, this is the IC Jam, and I am the only partner who's here. So, these opinions are not the opinions of Ideal Comics, but of Matthew Reese. Okay, so Biden is hip deep into China, and I don't know what's up with that. He's walking around like a marionette. This is like not even arguable if you look at it, right? So the other day, people were talking about how like, oh, if this goes through the way it looks like it is, the favored nation status is going back to China, and they're going to be running us in 10 years. All of our kids are going to be speaking Chinese. And then the only thing left, the only thing left is to hit the stars. And Adam Baldwin on Twitter said, so we're living through a prequel to Firefly.
Yeah. It also had a very similar beginning. Aside from it having its unique verse, but other than that,
right.
The same type of stuff was going on.
Yeah, and I started cracking up, but there was
I love Adam Baldwin's Twitter. I was always wondering, like, for years, everybody said nobody likes him. It's like, why does nobody like him? And then I started seeing, it's like, oh, it's because those people don't like him.
Yeah.
He's actually kind of sane.
Well, and also he's like, unfiltered, right? I mean, he's never mean, but he'll tell you, at least not that I've seen. Oh, that's interesting. I guess I hadn't really thought about it, not having seen Starship Troopers, but Tim Morris points out that Firefly used the Starship Trooper uniforms for the Purple Bellies. I had not picked up on that because I've not seen Starship Troopers, but I've seen enough stills that when you say that, I know you're right.
Yeah. One of the cool things about Starship Troopers is the kind of like the ethical and moral philosophy behind it. Where part of the problem was with the leading of science and the rigging of votes and stuff. It was there's too many people in the system who had no investment into the system were making bad decisions. So one of the changes with the whole service guarantee citizenship thing, which you see in certain countries in Europe right now, the ones that don't really get along with the EU, because most of the Scandinavian countries don't get along with the EU.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, and they're the thing about it is the Scandinavian countries, they play along, but they're far enough removed geographically where
Yeah.
it doesn't really affect them, and their populations are so small, and nobody wants to go there. For the most part, I mean, like they've had a large amount, like Sweden has had a large amount of Muslim immigration and all that kind of stuff. But other Europeans are like, it's already cold here. Why would I go to the Arctic Circle? And
well, even with the Muslim immigration, it's mostly the southern half of
that's
Sweden.
very true.
Nobody wants to go up to the north.
Yeah,
and
nobody's in Valen, Lapland.
And in many ways, they're closer to actual capitalism than we are. And most of them don't even have a minimum wage or anything.
Ironically, especially Denmark, with the exception of their ridiculously high taxes. But the thing about Denmark is they have super high taxes, but like the government doesn't own or control that much of the economy. They just want them to pay. As long as they pay, everyone's fine. But in America, there are so many restrictions on business that like you can own anything you want, but you know, Uncle Sam still tells you what the hell you can do with it. And that's not ownership. That's communism.
It's like rental property at best.
Yeah.
I think the only Scandinavian country that even has a minimum wage is the Netherlands, and it only just went into effect in July, and it's a monthly salary minimum, not even an hourly rate.
Yeah. Well, one of the funny interesting things about Denmark I looked up, this has been 5 or 6 years ago now, but at the time, Denmark actually more than half the people in Denmark made less than what would have been minimum wage, right? Because they didn't have an official minimum wage, but they had a practical minimum wage. But because there were enough people that weren't working full time or were on some sort of disability or were just living off the system because they have such a large security net, that more than half of the people made less than half minimum wage. Or more than half the people made minimum wage, lived off minimum wage, and I thought that was hilarious. But
it is.
I will point out that is, I have read that, Tim, and that is crazy.
Yeah, there are definitely problems in Sweden. Norway seems to be the most based country right now.
Yeah, well, and it's or either that or Poland.
Yeah, one of those two.
Yeah.
I think it's because nobody wants to go to Norway. Like even more so than any of these other countries.
And I think part of what happened too is there was such a I don't know if you've seen Stephen Fry talk about this, and I kind of believe him. He has this theory. It's the only thing I think he said that's really insightful is that all of the boldness, all of the people that were fearless left Europe and other places in the world and came to America.
Yeah.
And so we have this, you know, if that can be passed on genetically, we have the boldness of Europe, and they were left with the people that were too scared to leave. And we have a large Swedish population, and
I think it's even getting worse than that. We're getting what's it called? An exponential congregation of boldness, because a lot of the bold people also ended up going to south of the border, Mexico, and all the way down through Latin America. But a lot of people, as we know from our immigration standards, have been coming up from south of the border, and those are probably also the most bold people from those areas, which is why there's a lot of like cartel overload in many of these places, and no rebellion to overthrow them, because all the people who would are just coming up here anyway. We're getting like a hyper congregation of bold people in America, which, as things heat up, can only lead to disaster.
Well, and that's like, I don't know if you've read not Eric. Hang on a second. I got to cut my camera off. Great television, everybody. Curse me. It is Eric. It's, come on. Go back on. Okay. Eric Borden's Scrimshaw. One of my favorite comics. It's like my favorite probably my favorite sci-fi comic ever. And I don't necessarily agree with the premise as far as a reality thing. But But one of the premises is that the ice caps melted, and so the world flooded. And
Yeah.
I don't think that'll happen. But but it makes
That's
for
the fun part about fiction. You can play with things that may never happen.
well, and it's it's the same setup as Waterworld, but
Yeah.
it's the dystopia is a little more like Blade Runner. You know, it doesn't have like the tribal Mad Max thing to it. It's more technologically advanced, and so it's a fun science fiction thing. But it's also like on the edges of their society, and I just love it. It's great stuff. So I'm gonna actually flip through some of the art because it's just so fun. But yeah, it's thing. But one of the other premises is that there was a great Red-Blue War that separated America into two nations.
Yeah.
And so most of Texas gets taken back by Mexico, but like half of Mexico got flooded because they didn't have any way to retain the walls, and like Japan is still Japan because they built giant levees around Japan as the water was coming up.
Oh well, they would be smart enough to do that too.
Yeah.
Water
So
for
here's
so long.
some of the art on that thing. I just love this.
Yeah, that's nice.
Oh man, yeah. Oh, here we go. Check this out.
I feel like Japan somehow would pull it off, that if something like that was happening, they would just find some way to lift the entire nation up from sea level.
Well, and part of the premise is that the hero, this blonde fellow in the orange samurai get up, Hans Tanaka, he's half Norwegian and half Japanese, and so Norway and Japan become giant, huge sea powers. Each of them is like Great Britain in the 1800s, and so but America's like kind of a nothing in the world of Scrimshaw because it spent all of its capital, emotional capital, fighting with itself.
Yeah.
So it's fun because the guy was his mom's from Japan, his dad's from Norway. They split up, so he grew up between the places. So he's got this real dual nature to his character, and it's real fun. It's great. It's neat sea lore. So I mean, I think he did a really good job of it. And I've got I guess so. Tim Morris says Japovegian or Norwenese. I don't want to answer that question. I feel like if I get it wrong,
No.
will hunt me down.
What do the Norwegians call themselves? That's the real question.
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know what the Norwegian word for Norwegian is.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, seafaring Viking samurai, and it actually is really cool because it's a small crew of like people from like the Ring of Fire nations.
Yeah. Well, just like the northern Japanese people were kind of Vikings of their own right as well. So these kind of actually fit together really well.
Oh yeah, it's a really fun book. It's published by Alterna. So if you guys, and you can get the trades of the first volume, which is what I have here, on Amazon, which is where I got them, and they're not that expensive. So I would highly recommend Scrimshaw. It's like I said, probably my favorite science fiction series. I love it. And then the second volume hasn't been collected yet, I don't think. But yeah, I really.
Okay, so the Norwegians call themselves the Norsk.
That's right.
Like Norse. So the Japanese refer to themselves as the Nihonjin, or Nihonjin. So they would be the Norskonjin.
Norskonjin. If they were speaking some sort of combined language.
Combined language, yeah. Norskonjin.
Well, we can also assume that everybody just speaks English. So
or Chinese at that point, because it's the common tongue.
Well, I think
that's actually how Mandarin refers to itself, is Potongwa, which means the common tongue. Oh, and they're not wrong. It is the most spoken language on the planet. So,
yep. So, Nippon Norsk is what the
that was fine too. That's not too bad.
Yeah. The Japanese.
Nippon is the island itself. Nihon is the nation of Japan.
Mm-hmm. See, I never knew exactly what it was. I just knew that, like, before World War II, pottery came over that said Nippon on it.
Yeah.
And then after World War II, the pottery came over, said Japan on it. And I never knew why that was the difference.
Yeah. You know where Japan comes from, right?
Japan? No.
Okay, so the Japanese was first translated into Western languages by the Portuguese. But the word that was translated, the Chinese word for Japan, is Chipangu. Right, Chipangu, which sounds like Japan. So when the Portuguese translated Chipangu, it became Japan instead of translating Nippon. Or Nihon. Yeah.
That actually makes a ton of sense. So I know some things about the linguistic history, but not a lot. Not a lot. In fact, I was just talking to this person the other day who is a language student for fun. That's one of their hobbies.
Oh, it's one of my hobbies too.
Yeah, and so they're right now, right? Like she's studying Spanish and Japanese and Korean, and I'm just like, and
I could probably say the same if you replace Korean with Mandarin.
Oh yeah, and Malay, and I was just like, wow, that's a lot of Eastern European languages. I know nothing about this virtually. So it was an interesting conversation. But yeah. So I was going to show off some stuff.
Konnichiwa, or well, something close is supposed to be a konnichiwa in the chat. Actually, at this time for us, it would be konbanwa, because at nighttime, once the sun goes down, it's a different greeting.
That makes sense. All languages have a good evening.
Yeah, and there's for good morning, especially because the Japanese culture is a very respectful culture. Because people are cranky in the morning, you actually say "Ohayo gozaimasu," and gozaimasu is just kind of like a politeness that you add for respect of people. Yeah, and then after like 11 o'clock, it becomes konnichiwa until the sun goes down.
Well, that's interesting.
The U.S. has more of many people from Europe than the actual European countries they come from. There are more Irish in America than there are in Ireland, as well as Norwegians in Norway.
Oh yeah. I mean, because there's room for a massive population here, so it happens. There are definitely more Norwegians in the U.S. than Norway. That makes Swedes too. I'm pretty sure, and I think Finns as well. But there are 420.
You come to a new world. Entertainment is not what it is now back then.
Yeah.
Any theater houses and stuff, established entertainment is all overseas. So you got to find something to do when you come over here. And so what's everybody's favorite activity throughout all of history?
Harvesting, actually. But no, that was the other side of that too, is like there was enough land. People came over, they needed help in the fields. So that's a twofer, Yeah. I don't know that there was anybody who was having kids to help in the fields. But, there was a benefit to large families because they could produce enough food to feed the large family.
I'm going to say that there probably were people, because I personally know people I'm related to that had large kids for help, like large amounts of kids for help. My grandfather actually had 8 kids. Right.
Damn it, Tim.
Yeah. So my grandfather had 8 kids. He actually wanted more boys, but he ended up getting 2 girls out of it. And the only reason he stopped is because they started coming out in pairs. Yeah. But when they got older, he used them to help him because he was a plumber, but he also would buy houses and they would live in them while they built them up and flip them for more money.
That's a reasonable plan, I think.
Yeah, so he had a lot of kids to help him flip houses.
My family had a lot of kids, but there was my mom's family specifically, but there wasn't any kind of reason to it necessarily. There was a blended family. So my grandma, my granddad's first wife had a son that he adopted. And then they had 3, and she died in childbirth with their third. And then he married my grandma, and then they had 3 more. So at that point, you know, three is a pretty reasonable amount of kids to have with your wife. So without it being, a strain.
Yeah.
But we have 2 wives, it adds up.
Is it Tim's dad is one of 10. My grandfather was originally aiming for 10, but when they started coming out in pairs, he's afraid they might start coming out in more. So they stopped right there.
My grandmother was one of 14, I want to say. My not my grandmother on my mom's side, my grandmother on my dad's side. Yeah, the Crossleys. So there was a lot of Crosleys, but not all of them lived to adulthood. I think that two of them died, one in infancy and one in high school, if I recall correctly, of my great uncles. But
if I found a woman that wanted to have 10 kids, I'd probably settle down in a heartbeat.
So, but yeah. My sister has 3 kids, so it's finally going back the other direction. Cracks me up. We only have, of the pair, my wife and I, they say if you have twins once, then you have a huge chance of having them again. I think that's true, actually.
Well, what I think is you actually already had the chance because the propensity to create twins tends to be kind of genetic. And it's just the sign that once you have them, you know that propensity was always there.
I think that's probably very accurate.
Yeah.
So some more great television. I'm sorry, what?
Well. It also depends as well, right? Because there are 2 different genetic propensities. One, which can come from either parent, is the propensity that the cell might split at the beginning, and that's where identical twins come from, and that could be either, but it's a lot less likely. That's usually mutation. And the second propensity is only on the woman's side, and that is to have multiple eggs at once.
Yep.
For fraternal.
Yep. So I've got a good friend of mine who's he and his brother are fraternal twins, but they've got a really strong family resemblance. So like nobody recognized they were fraternal until they were in high school. I wouldn't say nobody, but a lot of people didn't. A lot of people assumed they were identical twins, but they weren't. And because they just have because their dad's family has just a really strong. They're actually Norwegian. Speaking of which,
yeah.
But they have a really strong family resemblance. So like cousins look like siblings, right? I mean, it's that kind of a thing.
Yeah. So my family's like that.
So everybody assumed they were identical twins, and unless you spent a lot of time with them, then you can point out the differences. But yeah, that was just adding that on. I did know one family that had triplets. And I know more than one family has triplets, but one that I've met, and there were 2 sisters and a brother, and the sisters were identical twins, and then they had a fraternal brother twin or triplet, right? I mean, that's how that works. Yeah. So like there was
one of each,
one of each, and then the identical twin sisters. So
yeah, my dad was a fraternal, or is still, because the other one's still alive, fraternal twin. And nobody could tell that they were fraternal, him and Al, other than the fact that the doctors knew that they were fraternal, until after my dad came back from the military. And then so much time had passed that they started developing differently.
Yeah. Well, and one of my friends in high school, his dad was a twin, and they were identical twins, but they separated like right after high school, and they went to different colleges, and they, the one stayed here in Scottsbluff, and the one went out to like Boston, and they both married, and they lived in their own, and they were apart. And when they got back together again after like 20 years, they didn't look identical anymore.
Yeah, because environment can change.
Because environment had changed them. But the funny thing is like they still like dressed alike because they had the same taste. Their wives looked like they were cousins. Because they weren't, because they had the same taste.
Yeah.
So, they both married like Colombian women, right? So I mean, it was like
what was funny is identical twins. It's not very uncommon for a set of identical twins to marry another set of identical twins, because if one of them happens to like one, there's strong chances that the other will also like the other because of how much they have in common. And the funny thing about that too is if they have kids, genetically since identical twins are clones, their kids are siblings,
sort of,
genetically speaking.
Yeah.
Not biologically, but they have
Right,
the
right.
same amount of random DNA as each other.
Right. I mean, that's there's because it's not exactly. You get
No,
like
'cause there's random chance and stuff like that.
and
Mutations.
you have the whole like even the genetic alleles don't necessarily, even though they're identical, those can be altered through the blada blada thingy.
Yeah, yeah. But even the mutations you get through the years, you'll have the same amount of random mutations that they could still have genetically have been your kid.
Yeah.
It's just they're not because the biological process didn't happen.
Yeah. I know where you're coming from, Tim, and I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm just saying the chances of finding one in Nebraska and then one in Boston,
are very slim.
That's I mean, we have like in Scottsbluff, a third of our population is Mexican or Hispanic or descended, right? So we have a lot of immigration. We've had Argentina, Peru, Mexico, lots and lots of people from Mexico and their descendants. So a third of our population is Hispanic in some form, or Hispanic or Latin, right? But not that many Colombians. Okay.
Yeah, you actually probably have a higher chance of finding Colombians in Boston just because of migration patterns than you do in your area.
It's just like, and so I mean, it's super common. I mean, like, you know, I mean, it wouldn't be hard to imagine finding anyway. It's just like that's a very specific similarity. It's not even a type. It's just like
the
same nationality across 2,000 miles difference. It's
like they just really like Colombian women and they have like a radar for it.
Apparently, yeah.
It's like if there's one here, I'll find them.
So yeah, I don't know.
Basically what I was just saying.
So yeah. Anyway, so I used to work with this gal who was half Colombian. Different set. Like I said, there aren't a lot of Colombians in town, but there are a few. And so I used to work with this gal who was half Colombian. And she was a real looker until you got like, you know, within like a few feet from her. And it's not that she wasn't pretty, but she wore so much makeup that she looked like she was wearing a clown getup.
It distorts the features and everything. Yeah,
it does, and it's just like, of course, you know, I mean, I'm you know, I dig the tomboy thing a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
You know, just like, you know, I like my wife and I, you know, I don't know, she's perfect for me. She doesn't like it when I talk about her a lot on stuff because she's a very private person, but no, as far as I know, her breath was fine, I think, but it was I don't know, she's wearing so much pancaking. Oh, hey, wow, how's it going? Thanks for tuning in. We're just bullshitting about stuff, talking about well, I guess Colombians most recently, but I was still going to show off some stuff that I've been.
Yeah. Well, you know, having a taste in tomboys is the straightest thing that you can have a taste in.
I think so. I've said for a long time.
Early girls make you do a lot of gay shit.
Yeah. I was the thing for me is that like is tomboys make the best moms.
Yeah.
Right. And I have this thing. I've this motto. I've gone to work into an icon, like a graphic in my head I've had for a while, which is the idea, you know, get married, rear children, build the future. Right.
Yeah.
I think that we all ought to be about that. And that the whole, I think if we were focusing on building the future, that would be an issue. Right. And I think we would so many problems in society. If we were looking at the future, we wouldn't have problems with that kind of stuff. And so I've had this in my head for a while, and excuse me. But yeah, and I just think, tomboys make the best moms.
Yeah. I want a large family, so I need somebody who's willing to tackle those very annoying kids, because all kids are annoying at some point in time.
This
and
is
you
true.
need to get down and dirty with them.
Yeah. Because you gotta, you never don't have to wrestle on,
kids don't even want to get in their clothes. You got to wrestle them just for that.
This is true. This is true.
I remember being a kid. I know what I'm going to have to put up with. They're probably going to be like me.
Especially if they're your kids, right?
Yeah. Oh, good luck with that. I'll live out in the middle of nowhere.
Well, Mr. Bunderdome, how are you coming with all of that? Just not really my business, but come on. I don't want to say make less comics, but because, by the way, last week I got Common America 2. I opened it up right before my Thursday show. I opened it on stream. I read it again last night. I really dig it. But yeah. I gotta say, one of the things I love about Tim's books, I just love all of the little side notes he sticks in there, right? Like little gags, the in jokes. The problem is I don't get all of them. So, I'm like, I know I should understand this, but I don't.
Rabbits reproduce quickly. This is true.
This is true. Many small animals do, because it doesn't take that long to make them. But humans, unfortunately, only it's a pretty fixed time at 9 months.
Yeah, about
or so.
A year.
Of course, we're getting to the point now with technology. If a baby's born at 22 weeks, his chance of survival is like upwards of 90.
Yeah, my brother was a preemie.
But at 22 weeks,
Yeah.
That's like 6 months.
I think my brother was only like 2 weeks early, which is not like that bad at all.
Yeah, 2 weeks. Well, because like 38 to 40 is considered full term. So like both of my sons were at 38 weeks, like on the nose. And of course, when our younger was born, they went in, they did the whole ultrasoundy thing to kind of figure out how big he was, right?
Yeah.
And we went in a month before his due date, and the doctor was really concerned because his estimated weight was my oldest son's birth weight. And so they're like, well, they were talking about we're going to have to induce labor or look at a C-section, or your kid's going to be enormous, or and so Amy was really worried about it. And then, she went into labor like 3 days later, or not. Well, it was 3 days. It was like 2 weeks later. And so he was born at 2 weeks early, but.
So it was stress-induced labor.
I don't think it was necessarily stress. It was just time. The kid was ready, So Amy was.
I came out on the exact date that they said I was going to come out 9 months before. So yeah,
really?
December 2nd. Yeah, I'm a very punctual person.
I think I believe I was a couple days early, but I think that was the last time I've been early to anything. So. I'm not sure. Like So Captain Cummings and Tam are both saying you're gonna have babies delivered and grown artificially before too long. I'm not so sure that's true. I think we're farther away from that than we think we are. So I don't know. I think it's just like, like people talk about, they're going to clone humans soon. Well, cloning humans is a lot harder than we think it is. Like, humans are so complex.
Well, it depends how you want to clone them.
Yeah.
It might not be that hard to force twins.
Yeah.
Right? If you wanted to, yeah.
They can force twins in other mammals. So it's theoretical to force twins in humans. Although
But taking somebody who's already been born, pulling their DNA out, and then cloning them, that's a lot steeper task.
Well, I mean, and like they can do that with like rats, but like rats aren't nearly as complicated. They've done that with sheep, but they don't live very long, you know. So I just suspect. How do you canonically explain your survival after Black Ops 3? Did I miss myself in Common America 2? I don't know. Maybe I did.
Mister, I catch all the continuity problems and things.
Well, I thought I went back looking for it, and I must have missed myself somewhere. I don't know. I have to go back and look now. I saw the pickles, and Shabby was pretty obvious, and Sashi was in there, and a couple of people I didn't recognize. I was noticing the number 1 Marmaduke Street, and I thought that was hilarious. No.
Oh no, you're here talking. Actually, I got a continuity error in one of my own works. Not the main one. The webcomic is exactly the way it's supposed to be. But in that manga that I made over the summer, I caught a scene where the dwarf is missing eyebrows. Really quick, and it's a manga, so you're meant to read it quick. Most people wouldn't notice that thing, but I caught it when I was like, man, I was in such a rush making this thing. I should really go back and add eyebrows to that.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah. So it's because like the dwarf's hair doesn't seem attached to the body. It's like one of those like Orko or like a Final Fantasy Black Mage style dwarf where the heavy clothes, glowing like Jawa eyes coming out of the blackness. So the eyebrows sit over the bandana. And in one scene, there's just no eyebrows. It's just bandana, which I think most people, if they weren't paying attention, would have noticed because you're not supposed to be seeing eyebrows over a bandana.
Right.
Normally, but it's a fantasy world, so it's actually off to be that way.
Yeah. Well, I've seen that done a lot. I mean, even the Looney Tunes stuff. So, and I actually didn't. I haven't read your manga at all.
Oh, so. No, I figured.
So here's something that I'm going to tease. I don't know if you know Seven on Twitter, but he and I are working on a project, and he's been throwing me some concept art, and I wanted to share a little of it because it's pretty exciting to me. And so Black Magus is the character from Force of Good and Evil who's got an entrenched history in our universe, and we're going to play on that. And so he's been doing some different character sketches. So Clamzo is a character that we'll be introducing sometime 2021. So the guy in the back there is Mark Question, who is a paranormal detective that we have. You can look right now on Forces Good. I mean, at idealcomics.net /shop, and you can buy a story featuring him. I'm not going to tell you who that is yet. Yeah. So we're going to be working on a thing, see where it goes from there. But I'm pretty excited.
I'm not allowed to get excited for things I'm working on anymore.
Yeah.
It always blows up in my face.
That's funny, man. So, well, I was really hoping that I have been with Chris Lore, the Z-Bytes book that he's working on. We've been meaning to get down and talk about some production details, and we have been missing each other for like 3 weeks. So life just keeps getting busy. But
yeah, I will sometimes draw eyebrows through the hair, depending on what I'm working on. Like that manga, especially because it's supposed to be like a over the top, highly expressive and stuff. Almost the entire time, you can always see the eyebrows over everybody's hair. But most of the time, they have like a pencil thin eyebrow as well.
Yeah. Well, one of the main characters from Force of Good and Evil that we have is Demon Priest, and we almost always draw his hair a little funky. I mean, because he's got horns, right? Let me see if I can find a good picture for it. I think I've got one
Well, that would
handy.
totally mess up any hairdo.
Well, yeah. I mean, absolutely. So we just fake it, you know. that's all. That's all you can do with it. But I think if I look,
That's one thing I like about manga is that because they're not trying to be realistic, they'll just draw the hair sticking out of the or the horn sticking out of the hair as if it's not colliding with the hair whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that is kind of what we do end up doing with Demon Priest. Let me see here. Here we go. Here's a picture that Chris did. Chris Lawton did years and years ago. And I will share that. Man, oh man, oh man, oh man. And so, yeah. Here, oh, you guys can't see that yet. There it is.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you just fake it as much as you can. And right now, the Taliesin, my youngest, is working on inking a story that Demon Priest is a big part of, called I've Been to Hell. And that's another story I'm really excited about, because it's coming along super nicely. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and share some of the pages. Find it here.
One of my problems is I don't do model sheets of characters before I introduce them, and I probably should do model sheets.
Yeah, that'd probably be good.
I kind of just design characters as they come up, and I don't ever think about like, what does this hairstyle look like from the side, and how would it collide with their ears? So then I'll get up to a profile view of the character. I'm just like, how do I do this? It's such an awkward hairstyle.
Yeah, I can definitely relate in terms of like, especially if you start doing just a little bit and then you draw it up once and you think you got it if it's a background character or something, and then you end up using it more often, you know. And it's just like, well, this was a really good idea on paper that one time I used it that way.
That's why all background characters I make have like really realistic, common hairstyles. So I can just like, if I have to reuse them, I can look up what that hairstyle looks like in real life from that angle.
So
like most people just have buns that are tied back and stuff like that.
So speaking of hairstyles, so this is page 1. Tim Morris said the video is working really crappy for him. So
I have it up on the other screen, and it's running at 720 pretty fine.
So also, if you're still here, Star, hello. But anyway, so this is pencils by Rolf Gardeau, who is our regular Forces penciler, and inks by my son Taliesin. And speaking about hairstyles, I can't point it out because it won't make sense, but right there in the front row of the car, that's Demon Priest's mom, who is also a demon, and she's got hair that sticks up out of her beehive hairdo. so Tolly was just like, "What's a beehive?" So it was like, oh yeah, you wouldn't know that because nobody you know wears a beehive, and it's not.
Let me go find an old sitcom I can send you screenshots from.
Exactly. Here's a picture of your great grandmother from the 70s, you know, or your great aunt, because she also wore a beehive until the mid-80s, actually. But yeah, so. It needs a little bit of the background stuff cleaned up, and I'm going to be doing flat colors and on stuff here. But what happened?
Or that's actually a hard one to do too. Is cat girls exist in X Dynamis Chaos,
right?
And their ears are raised, so they're not quite at ear line. They're slightly higher on the sides and top of the head, and I have to figure out like how does hair interact with the fact that those ears are up there.
Page 3's borders disappeared. That's disturbing. No. I don't think I saved. Crap. Well, that's annoying to me. But anyway, yeah.
With one of the characters, I have the Jackrabbit, who is a bunny girl, and her ears are basically right on the top of her head, like you would expect, kind of like a a
Of a rabbit.
type shape. Yeah, and it's like, okay, so how do I have to draw this hair when it pulls back into a ponytail? Because it's going to have to go past these ears.
That would be really irritating as somebody who wears a ponytail, having to work around.
Yeah. Because naturally your hair kind of like, you have your sideburns or whatever, but the rest of it just kind of stops at the ear right there. So you could just pull it straight back and right over the cusp.
Well, and actually my head hair, like where it grow really long, actually stops about here.
Yeah.
Like below where the edge of my sideburns. So I've got to trim that off.
Just a little bit.
Yes, Tim. Somebody said rabbit.
Yeah, actually, me and Tim were on your show together, the Matriarch, and I told him about this character before, but it was a long time ago.
Oh, okay.
I think I sent him an image of that character too. It was like an Easter card that I made where she was talked into. I could pull it up too. It's a good picture. She was talked into being like the Easter Bunny. Let's see, where's my image? Yeah, she was her cohort, Little Familiar, because it's kind of like a magical girl story and a spinster story mixed together. Talked her into reaching out to the mayor and volunteering to be the Easter Bunny at their local mall in Seattle because it would be good publicity for being on the good side of the public.
That seems like it would end terribly.
Let's see, where is this? Well, it's great, but she hates it too. She's like, why do I let them talk me into this stuff?
Oh, that's hilarious though, man.
Yeah. Boom,
so
here we go.
Oh, I have seen this.
Yeah.
Why do you let me talk me into this stuff? So the little rabbit in the front there, that's
a familiar.
That's a magical rabbit.
Yeah. So he used to have her job. He was a local guardian called the White Rabbit, but she was like the sole survivor in a bus accident, and the only way that his job is to protect people, is to save her, was to confer his blessing onto her. But it'll be like 6 months until he rejuvenates enough to take the blessing back. So he's kind of just wandering around as her familiar during that time, and she has to do his job in that 6-month period.
So is he like a puka?
No.
Okay.
No. Actually, he was a real person at one point in time, way back in the past. He's like 1,000 years old. I plan on telling his story too at some point. He's actually the bastard half brother of Leif Erikson, who was left on the Newfoundland and ended up wandering across America.
Dude, I love this so much.
Yeah. His name is he gets made fun of his name too. It's Bjergir, which Birgir, Bjergir, which means one who helps. But his name looks like Burger, so she always calls him Burger, like a hamburger.
Oh man.
And he hates it's like it's Bjergir.
So he's an angry little Norsk.
Yeah. Who's stuck as a rabbit, yeah.
And we've come full circle, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. Those guys who are here for the first hour.
Yeah. This was the first book I was gonna do. I ran a Kickstarter for it in late, almost holiday season of 2017, and it failed. And I'm like, whatever, I'm just going to go do my webcomic now. And I was like, I still want to do it. So I've been doing like these little promotion things and like intermixing people from the worlds and stuff together, trying to like let people know about the stuff until I actually finally
right
stuff like that.
So here's the thing, right? I don't know when I'm ever going to get to it. But Chad and Greg have one more road trip story, right? That's like spring break 2006, right? It's their senior year. They're going to visit a super college in California. If I get around to it, This seems like they have to run into your wandering
Oh yeah,
rat.
totally. Yeah.
If they're, I don't know where he is in 2006, but
He would actually still be in about the Seattle area. He's been in that general area since not too long after he was abandoned. He basically walked across there. He found like a native tribe that he got along with and lived with them. But then there were some problems because he was basically being chased by madness, which is an element that exists in the Eximus Chaos universe.
okay.
And the madness caught up to him in the tribe. He was dying. They needed a guardian, so they conferred a blessing onto him, and he became the White Rabbit. And he's basically just been in that area ever since, fighting the forces of madness.
I can dig. That's fun. But yeah, there's got to be a gag in there somewhere about, because I don't know, because they're coming from Wisconsin, so I mean Seattle's entirely out of the way to go down to. Presidio is a town I want him to visit, which
he does occasionally wander out of the area. Yeah.
But Presidio is one of our fictional cities, and it's where San Rafael is in the real world, right?
Okay.
So in our alternate history, the Presidio de San Francisco, which is the San Francisco, was named after the mission there, and they built a governmental office called the Presidio there in San Francisco. In our fictional universe, there was a when Santa Anna was trying to get rid of Tim.
Technically, this time it's my fault, but I brought it up because I had showed this to Tim before.
Yeah. So anyway, that's hilarious. But anyway, so that they ended up, there was a whole deal with Santa Anna, and the San Franciscans moved the Presidio north into San Rafael to avoid the legal trouble, right? And so with that, the San Rafael became known as Presidio, and so the major governmental area in the region was in Presidio rather than San Francisco. So they have
he actually has been down that way before.
Yeah. So
I have another story that I was actually going to do as a radio drama, but I need to finish writing it, and then I need to cast people for it. I'm on the last scene, and it's just been sitting on the last scene for a year and a half now because I've been working on other stuff. I could probably finish it any time. I just have other stuff I'd rather be working on.
Because I've been wanting to talk to you about this for a while, and I was hoping to finish catch up to Eximus Chaos before I actually said anything, but it's already out. I've really thought it'd be fun to do some crossover stuff.
Yeah.
Because like there are just some similar themes between my stuff and your stuff, and I like yours. So like, can I steal a little bit every once and again?
Well, you can actually, a lot of the stuff is just open. I kind of treat my stuff like it's open source.
Right. You talked about that on the show before.
I even have like a Dojinshi program for people if they just want to write their own stories that are based on the characters and stuff like that. But this story that I was going to do as a radio drama is called The Skull Spectre, and it's kind of like an old-fashioned crime drama.
That's a great title.
Yeah, like The Shadow and stuff like that, and it takes place in just post transcontinental San Francisco.
Well, and one of the really fun things about that does sound really fun. But one of the other fun things too about the Clamzo character I had on earlier is that his family are the protectors of another city in Michigan. So that they've been secretly keeping the city safe from pirates and things for and monsters. But he doesn't. That Myron Clamzo, when we first meet him, doesn't know about the monsters because his family kept it a secret from him for some reason. But I haven't figured that out yet exactly.
Yes, pre-poop on the street for San Francisco.
But yeah, that's
there was plenty of poop on the street back then. It was just all from horses.
It was all from horses. That's grand. I hadn't seen that yet, but yeah. So I love the idea about local protectors, and the idea that you've got a little fluffy bunny who's the mystic protector of the region is just amazing.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, he wasn't just a little fluffy bunny. Before he conferred his blessing, he was actually like as tall as a Norseman.
Right. Yeah. He's a big burly man who suddenly is trapped in this tiny little body. It's hilarious.
Yeah. And so with the Skull Spectre too, since that takes place in like the very late 1800s.
Okay. Nice.
He would have still been doing his protective thing back then, and every so often saw the Coast did have a episode that planned to cover that he was going to be in one of those episodes with Spectre.
Okay, you're roboting for me.
Oh, am I? Yeah,
my
internet's lately.
Yeah, your signal just went all red for me here. Mm-hmm. So, which is unfortunate because that sounded really great up until it went.
Yeah, my signal's red too.
But yeah, we'll have to. Well, if you happen to need a rolling baritone that's a little hyperactive, you know where to find it.
Yeah.
Because I've loved radio drama since I was a little kid. I was just talking on Twitter the other day. I can't remember who. Oh, I remember what it was. Jamal. I'm going to forget his last name. Who does the GT media reviews, comic reviews? Did a review of Green Hornet, and somebody in the world directed me to this huge thread about Green Hornet stuff. And I've loved Green Hornet for years. So we were talking about the radio show, and man, I love
the Green Hornet radio show too.
I cut my teeth on radio shows, right? Like, I mean, we would drive. When we were kids, when I was a kid in the '80s, we would drive around America, to grandparents' house, listening to radio shows, whatever, and in tapes of all that kind of stuff. And so, man, I grew up on that stuff. I love it. And that kind of was my intro in some ways, like the radio dramas or my introduction into comics, right? That happened. Yeah. It wasn't a direct thing, but it was one of those things where, like, the Green Hornet and the Lone Ranger. And then I was like, got into comics, and there was like the Shadow, and I was like, so it reinforced everything that I dug. And so that was just a big part of it for me. So I've always wanted to do radio drama. I think that's something that I definitely would love to have happen someday.
yeah. So I'm planning this as like a 12 episode season, like a show.
Ooh.
Where each one is about, because with the ad breaks, much like early TV, radio drama was about 20 minutes or so, separated into scenes. And the theme of it is, because it's in that time, the hero is kind of like a magician, like an illusionist, right? He does have power, but it's kind of like street level, low level power. And he is also like one of those wealthy cover things. He owns a newspaper in the area, so it helps him kind of keep covered, but also know what's going on. Right, and he comes across a bunch of like a rogues gallery throughout the season, but like the main villain is another illusionist that he can't figure out the identity of. And it's there's a few like characters that'll be recurring and stuff, and it's built up as like a season-long mystery with episodic threats to it.
Nice. That's fun. Yeah. So that would be a fun thing to do, like if it's well received enough, you could even do some sort of subscription. People could something like that. I don't know. I'm always thinking about ways of turning my hobbies I'm always trying to think of ways of turning my hobbies into money making things. So far, none of them have worked. But
yeah. Well, so I do get some tips for this site, mostly from the same people, but I get them. And so the site has paid for itself for the last couple of years,
which is
at
nice.
least I don't have to pay for maintenance fees. And I have gotten some purchases of some physical products. What I'm thinking of doing, since availability is the only thing that matters to me. That's why I decided to go into webcomics in the first place. I want people to be able to read my stuff. I'm thinking for some premium stuff, doing like a paywall, like a pay what you want with a minimum that's pretty reasonable. And then having it with a maximum that if enough people pay into it, and unlocks it for free for everyone.
Yeah,
obviously letting people know that ahead of time, so it doesn't feel like if they're paying into it and then other people eventually get it for free, they were getting ripped off. Like they know fully what's going on.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. So, speaking of which, I'm just going to go ahead and put that up there.
Yeah.
Oh, our entire catalog of digital comics are available for less than $15. You can download them tonight. We're looking to have a sample run of print books of one title. We printed up a special edition of the original version of Z-Bites, Chris Lore's zombie comic, that we are going to for the Minicon that we just had last month, and so we're going to be selling a limited number of them on the website once I get all the kinks worked out. But so, which I think I've got all the stuff figured out. I just have to pull the trigger and make it happen. But yeah. Oh man. But yeah, so we've got a couple of things in the thing. I know Barry's been working on. He got called into work tonight. That's part of why he's not here. So they had to do mandatory overtime. And so he's like, well, I'm hoping to get out early. And I was like, well, good luck with that.
When does anybody ever get out early on mandatory overtime?
It happens. Okay, so Barry, I don't know, maybe it's his business. I don't know if he wants to talk about what he does, but it's potential with his job that could happen.
Yeah,
but because there's a supply and demand kind of a thing, but I don't know that it ever has happened, right? But yeah, the potentiality exists. So
it's like having like 2 Friday the 13th in the same year and both of them being full moons.
Yeah, that's
probably the probability.
Yeah, it could happen, but it's not likely. Yeah,
it really doesn't. Yeah.
Now, man, I suddenly wonder if that's ever happened, but I don't really want to look it up.
I'm sure it has. I'm absolutely positive that it has happened.
Because, I mean, we've only been keeping track of Friday the 13th so long.
Yeah.
Wow says, I thought of the Slayer song mandatory suicide when you said mandatory overtime and how funny a Weird Al version would be.
Maybe I need to do that.
That would be great. That is hilarious. So, anyway. But yes, to your comment earlier, Captain, I definitely am excited to read that. So, for those of you, I don't know. I don't know if he wants to be talking about that in public. I haven't talked to him about it. So, but yeah, man. So those are the things that I have been working on. I think I'm out of stuff to talk about.
Dude, I'm always working on too much stuff. That's a big problem.
Well, I mean, I get that too, right?
Yeah.
It's just one of the things, like, Barry and I were talking about, and I was hoping he could make it because I was going to pester him about pages for the exposition or story, because he's making progress with it, but it's kind of slow going, doing all the chores himself.
So would it be more prudent, instead of bothering you, if I pestered him like, hey, where's my book?
I don't know. But here's the situation, and I really want to send a message to everybody who backed, right?
Yeah.
Because, like, on the one hand, like, I mean, everybody who's been talking to us has been really great. Everybody all of our backers we have contact with, they've been really understanding of everything. But we've got other projects that are kind of moving along that aren't, whatever. And I'm just like, man, if those get finished up before that, like, crowdfunding or even doing anything feels kind of skeezy.
Yeah.
But it's other teams and they're done. It's like the Joe Jobs book that Rico and I did, years ago. We finally got it all put together and packaged and did a small print run for the Minicon. And I've sent digital copies out to a few people, and they're like, oh, this is really fun. You should do something with it. And I'm like, yeah, but what do I do that's not skeezy, right? Because we've got 20 people that are owed a mystery book that isn't done, but I've got a slice of life comedy that's finished, you know. So I don't know. I mean, I don't want to, you know, do wrong by the backers, but it's also like, time's moving, man. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's
So
also because like you've got other people you're working with, so
Mhm.
getting money into this system is kind of a necessity.
Yeah.
That's why, like me, I don't think I would. I tried it once just to see if I could, and I was working with somebody else at the time, but I don't think I would even do a crowdfund unless I was working with somebody else on a project.
Yeah.
When I
And
could
like one
just
of the things we've talked about is like we as a company don't really want to do another thing unless the project is finished, right? And so that's kind of where we're at right now with, you know, but like with Joe Jobs, it's a slice of life comedy. It's done. It's 24 pages. It's full color. It's finished. I mean, we like, you can buy the digital version for $250. I'm probably going to put it on sale for Christmas. But yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that's there. And like, you know, we could sell print copies too. People have talked about that, but and we do have a handful of print copies that were overprints from the Minicon. So I mean, that we could do that with. But as far as like trying to, you know, really like take it to look for a bigger market for it than just people who happen to watch my shows or, you know, cruise the website anyway. It's which I would love to do, but I also like, I don't want to, you know, any of our original backers to feel like we're, you know, screwing them out of anything. So I don't know, because I know how I felt. Okay, you know, when the whole Red Rooster thing, right, and Mitch's other books came out, I know how I felt. But I'm also just a writer. So
Well, this is another reason why I want to do something like this unless I was working with somebody, because I do my art too. But it's like I could just get it out at whatever pace I want to get it out if nobody's expecting to pay for it and a deadline or anything like that. Though there are still people yelling at me to get the next page out because it's been forever. That's like I want to listen to them because I don't want to lose readership, but at the same time, I'm not too worried about it because they're getting stuff for free and they understand my schedule by now.
Yeah.
Like we've got this really complicated, iffy relationship that everybody's just kind of in an understanding of.
Yeah, I think that makes a big difference too, and especially when people can be understanding, right? When they kind of get that. Oh, hey, speaking of which, another thing I want to go ahead and show off. Let me bring the share screen up. We were talking about looking for a cover image to use for I'm going to feature this to use for the webtoon version of Forces. What do you think?
Yeah, that could work.
Yeah.
The problem is everything has to be square.
Yeah. Which this is square, but
but it's just
it didn't mean that our characters kind of had to shrink up to fit.
Yeah.
So, and I noticed I missed a couple of white fills I got to take out. Oh, drat. I wonder if I saved that. I wonder if I saved that as a. Okay, I do have it as a PNG, as a layered image, so I can fix it. Oh, good. I will do that some other time. Because there's just a couple of areas that didn't get removed from that layer to show the background.
Yeah, I have to start, which I've started getting the habit, but instead of using like PSDs, I've been getting in the habit of using TIFs.
Yeah.
I hate having to click on it to see what image it is if I've got things with similar names. Or if I'm going back through pages and I need to sample a color from something, I'm like, okay, which page, because I have them all numbered by page number.
Right.
Which page is this color that I'm sampling on? But if there was TIF, I can see the preview because it renders as a full image.
Well, and like when I have I color, I don't know what program you use, But
Yeah.
I do most of my stuff in Clip Studio, and so anything in the Clip Studio format, which is layered, you can preview it through that interface. So
Yeah.
I don't have. I mean, it's the same problem, same thing. But I'll use a lot of our stuff for print. We save those as TIFF because they're non-compressed, so that
Yeah.
way the all the information gets to the printer.
Well, I have to do that for the print too, but it's usually a smaller file because I work at 600 DPI and the printers want 300.
Yeah.
Which I thought was weird. It's like, why
Well,
the 600 DPI was the standard. Why are you going down to 300?
Well, because part of it depends on the printer.
Yeah.
Because like part of the thing was like when we started back in the day, right? The highest a printer could print was 300.
Yeah.
Well, now they can. A lot of them can do it 600. So, so that's what. That's what I've been doing everything we've been doing recently in 600. Just so I mean, they make the files huge, but that way we're getting the quality we want out of it. So
Yeah, because I'd rather work higher and then compress it down than the other way around because it tends to look better that way.
Oh yeah, definitely. Even if you're using smart resizes, sometimes it just doesn't look right.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I'm pretty tickled with this. Now the art, I will tell you, it's a hodgepodge of stuff. The characters on this are all berries. He did for our Facebook cover. So if you follow Ideal Comics on Facebook, that's our cover image for that. The background was Chris and myself from years ago. We made some set pieces for Forces so we wouldn't have to draw them over and over and over again. And this is the front of the 24/7 Mart where the kids hang out after school. And then the cover banner, that's mine. So it's a real hodgepodge of stuff to go all together. But I think I don't know. I think it kind of captures what I wanted for the Webtoons thing. So
Yeah.
So, I don't know. We'll see. I'm hoping to get that put up there sometime soon, and then see if anyone reads our comic. I don't know. So I think it's a really good comic, but I'm probably super biased. So
Yeah, I mean, you should have to. I mean, if you didn't have faith in your comic, who's going to?
yeah, I think there's a fair argument about that.
Yeah.
So, although since we're here anyway,
I mean, I think my comic's okay, but I have to hype it up more. No,
So-
I enjoy it. I just know it's not my best story. It's just the one I have to tell first because everything makes more sense after it's told. It's kind of like the thing that grounds everything else.
So I am going to go ahead and of course, Metal, you've already seen the thingamy here, but I saw the first chapter is colored now.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I think it looks. I mean, it's just flat colored. Did a very basic kind of thing, but I think it pops. It's fun. I'm pretty tickled with it. So
Yeah, well, with that art style, flat's probably the most you want to do. Maybe cell shade in certain areas and stuff. But you don't
and I've
wanna
got a few. I've got a few fades for like to give the impression of distance or things like that.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I wanted to keep it pretty plain. But yeah. So I got the first 3 stories are all colored up there, so they're all ready to go onto the Webtoons. I just have to make it happen in between other things I'm doing.
No, I remember recently I had to recolor the first 4 chapters.
Really?
Yeah, not totally because I saved the layers and I do each of my. I don't do like a layer for each color. I do a flat layer, then I have a tone layer, then a second tone layer.
Right.
So I have like the positions, everything. I could just lock the layer and then change the color of certain areas. So it didn't take too long, but my original colors were awful because I was doing them in CMYK. I was coming from traditional color. My monitor was not a standard colored monitor. It was
Wow.
like a old one. So there's just all kinds of problems. You come to the print, it's really muddy on some like devices, phones and stuff. It's just really dark and muddy. And it's like, dang. So I went back. Eventually I changed the colors when I hit the 5th chapter anyway. But I just went back and I changed everything to match the new colors, and it looks a lot better now.
That would be exhausting. So especially because you had to reload everything. Did you reload everything up to the website then?
Yes, I did. One by one as the fit pages were finished. So there were like random bits that looked better than other ones if a new reader was going through. But if a new person goes through now, and I waited to upload to Webtoons until I had finished this. So all the ones in Webtoons are the newer colors.
Right.
But
See,
yeah, it was like this long process that took me a couple months to get through.
yeah, no, I mean, I just finished a few months ago re-uploading all of Forces after we migrated our servers back in 2019. And so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Like,
We
I
have,
think collectively it only took me a week to do it, but it was a week that was split up in between doing other things. And I started and finished it on both ends of working on that manga all summer. So there was like this big gap in between the start and the finish of it.
yeah, I spent so much time working on those, uploading those stories. So I don't know how many pages are you at with X Dynamos?
Well, you know what? I can go to Webtoons, and if we count covers, it'll let me know. Let me check real quick. Every single one, it gives you a number for it. So let me see. It's probably close to 120.
Okay. See,
Yeah,
I feel,
exactly. A 120 was the last one that was uploaded. Yeah.
I feel much better because we're looking at almost 600 for Forces.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It took a really, really, and I was just doing a story a week, but on some of those, well, most of them, I think I spent 3 weeks on the National Villainy story, which I don't know if you got to yet, but that's like 92 pages long.
Mm.
So that's the single longest story we've told, but it's I don't know. I read through it a couple times. I think the pacing is really good, but it took us a really long time. It took us a year and a half because there was a couple of of unwanted but necessary hiatuses that happened during the production of it.
Mm.
When because Chris moved to Omaha in the middle of that, and then he stopped doing the art because focused on his masters. And then Barry took over for a while, and then he had some stuff happen, so he couldn't continue. And then we had Joe Carradine come on, doing pencils, and so yeah, it was a. And then he moved to Vegas in the middle of that, so it was a life. Life really hamstrung us for sure on that one, but I think the story is really good. I really enjoy it, and I think the flows really well if you read it through. But it is a long one. So
Yeah, I haven't gotten to that one yet.
oh man, yeah, it's the premise is that the kids from villain school get picked to go. It starts with a day in life in villain school sort of thing, but the kids from villain school get picked to travel to Fremont City, Colorado, to participate in the first annual national villainy competition. So it's like a giant track and field day for villains. And so they get to meet a bunch of new students from other schools, and chaos ensues, and somebody tries to kill a bunch of people at villain school at the event, and it's a whole thing. So yeah, I love it.
Yeah,
I think it's a great story.
I think you told me the premise of this one before as well. But yeah.
Well, yeah. See, that should excite you. So you can be like, oh, wait, that sounds really cool. I'll have to check it out.
Well, you know, you and I have a lot of the same problems. There's a lot of stories we want to read, but
Yeah.
we're so busy that it's hard to get to everything.
Oh, so here's an embarrassing thing on that topic. So I was I backed Vestry, Pickles and Shabby's Vestry.
Yeah, I've got my copy right in front of me.
Oh yeah, I've got it sitting upstairs. And have I read it yet? Am I excited to read it? Absolutely. But have I read it?
Yeah, I actually got that one taken care of, that in the Ashcan, because I happened to have nothing scheduled for the day that it came in. Woke up, I went for a walk. It was in the mail, opened up when I got back, read it, and then went on and did other things.
Yeah.
So
I actually, last week or a couple weeks ago, when Tim sent out the digital version of Common America 2, I instantly had to read it. I got it in my mail, and I'm like, okay. So I stayed up till like 3 a.m. Because I was like, oh, I gotta read this, and I did. So that was the ticket. So
but then,
when the physical came, it took me a week to get to read it, almost again. So,
because if I don't read it right away, there's a good chance it's just going to sit there,
man,
for a while. Well, so I try to as soon as I get something.
Well, and I just got a box of comics from Alterna today, and I haven't tucked into them at all yet. But that's okay. So that's just what it is. I'll just have to get to when I get to it. I was talking. Actually, let me see here. Speaking of things, I'll look this up here. I'll share another picture. Something I stole. Speaking about Jamal with, I think it's in here with GT Media Reviews. He shared a hilarious. Let's see if I can find it. If I thought I screen capped it, but maybe I didn't. Oh, looks like maybe I didn't screen cap it after all. Unless I did it off my phone or something, which is possible. But anyway, it's that man checking out the girl with walking with his girl, checking out the other girl meme.
Yeah.
And it's labeled, me, comics I have, comics I don't have.
Yeah.
and I retweeted that and I said, I'm in this picture, I don't like it.
Yeah. Also, this other problem where I could be reading new stuff, but then I'll go back and I'll reread my old stuff.
Oh yeah,
like, I remember that joke. Cracked me up the first time.
Well, and like last week, I went through because I have tons of comics I haven't read yet. But last week, I went through and reread like 2 story arcs from Out at 5, Matt Johnson's Out at 5 that I've read like several times, and I was just like, I was on the web, just click, 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 click. Am I catching up on your comic? No. Am I reading Ninja High School? No.
I did that recently with 8-Bit Theater because I had introduced some people to 8-Bit Theater. And because I had introduced some people who'd never heard of it, it's like, dang, now I want to start reading through it again.
Yeah, I've never read 8-Bit Theater, but I know you and Barry were talking about it one week. Because
we were.
He used to be a really big 8-Bit fan. I don't know if he still follows up with it or not, but
yeah, well, one of the big problems too is that what got it onto it is because we're doing that RPG that I was talking about, the tabletop, and it's a Final Fantasy RPG. So I was showing some people in the group 8-Bit Theater, which a lot of my humor has even been developed by 8-Bit Theater. I reference that thing all the time, and most people don't get it because most people haven't read 8-Bit Theater. And like I've even referenced it in the webcomic a couple of times, and I don't know how many people will ever get it. But,
yeah, I wouldn't get it.
So I'm showing them there's these 5 Flash videos that were on Newgrounds, and you can watch them on YouTube as well. That covers like the first, I don't know, it's like 20 to 30 pages of it. It's separated into 5 really short videos with acting and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, if you guys are going to play this RPG, you're going to have to watch this. And I showed most of the group. And after showing them that, there's like, are there any more to this? Well, it's like not in video form, but you can go and read this comic where there's like 1,200 pages of it.
Yeah.
And then that made me want to go read it again. It's like, dang. This thing cracks me up every time I read it.
Speaking about that number of pages, I'm thinking about when I finish all of the story that I have for Forces, it's probably going to be 900 pages. I probably
Yeah.
have another 300 pages of story that needs to be told on that. That's depressing.
Yeah. No, you know, it's really depressing, and also funny is in 8-bit theater, if you get to page, I think it's like 1227 or something like that. It's called the longest setup in webcomic history. And it references something. It's close to the end too. It's like in the last 5 or 6 pages. It references something that was in like page 5 of the webcomic.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, so 1220 pages of setup just for this joke. And then they had the gall to even name it that. Because who's going to try to disprove them?
Yeah.
Are you going to go find some other webcomic that's just as long and count the number of pages in between
well, there was
just
speaking about comics that have that many pages to them too. Like a few years ago, I was in a Christmas art swap with the old crew on Comic Genesis, because I'm still on the boards every once and again.
Mhm.
And so I did some art, and the comic I got, we swapped art with, was a comic called The Mansion of E.
Mhm.
And it is, you know, the Maniac Mansion game?
Yeah.
Right? It's not that, but it has a similar vibe where there's this house and nothing seems to fit right.
Mansion of E. I never read it, but I'm aware of it.
Right. It's got crazy deep lore, and the dude's been doing like 3 comics a week for like 20 years. It's insane. And like I started reading through it, and like it's wacky, like off kilter, funny kind of stuff. And I was just like, I like it, but I'm not sure I like it. Like read 1,200 pages like it.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's like, I love finding old webcomics and reading them through. But I'm just like, man, and it's quality. I mean, it's goofy, it's silly, it's totally off kilter, but it's fun. It's fun. I can definitely see why people have been reading this thing for 15 years. I don't think I can read all of it. I just don't think I can do it.
You know what? I think it's pretty easy for me to binge something like that, even if I only have like a passing fancy for it.
Mhm.
And I think it comes from reading so much manga, because I've read manga that are like 70 volumes long, and each volume is like 200 pages.
Yeah. Well, I think you think about all the comics that I've read. I've got 5 filing cabinets full of comics. I mean, like I've read that much comics, but something's about sitting at your computer, just click, 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 click. We're just like, man.
I did that recently with JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I read all the way through what's available. There's probably more than 1,200 pages to that story, like easily.
Number one Marmaduke fan and Matt Krotz both have told me that I'm shortchanging my life by not reading that. And I'm like,
it is one of the wackiest stories you could ever read.
Because it was about a year ago.
Yeah,
it was about a year ago. We did our discussion of My Hero Academia. Oh, yeah, you were with us.
I was the voice of dissent.
Yeah. And so I don't know if you remember, they're saying that's when they told me, is like, you, Matthew Reese, you need to go read JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I was like, maybe.
Yeah, see, because I love that story. I'm a big proponent of it, but I'm also kind of tepid on recommending it to people, because it definitely isn't everybody's cup of tea.
Yeah. And I've watched a couple of like really like not in depth, but just like surface level reviews of JoJo's that like Dan Fan's done and stuff of the anime. And it's like,
the manga's way better. Mostly because of the artistic feature of it. The anime tries to capture it, but it just fails because what's his name? Araki is an expressionalist. So there's a lot of just like stuff that you can't capture in animation very well. And he is very creative, and it's sometimes too creative. Like, you ever see somebody who has ideas that are so off the wall that you're like, why would you ever decide to do that? But it somehow works out for him.
I look back through our archives and I think that sometimes, like
It's
I
like,
don't know if you remember our hero character that we introduced once, Spring Thing.
mhm.
I don't know. I feel like we need to readdress him, but I don't know that I really want to walk down that road again.
Yeah, so he'll be like, he's the type of guy that he will read a random Wikipedia article about these things called rods, right? And rods are like these weird invisible invertebrate fish things that are in the air, right?
Yeah,
And he'll read a Wikipedia article about it's like somebody's got to have that as a power, and he'll work it in like part 6 of the story. It's like weird things like that is like this has to be somebody's power, and he'll work it in. Vaguely understand it, just read a Wikipedia article, but there you go.
so that reminds me of something, a meme that my wife ran across on Facebook about a month ago, and it was an introduction to a report.
Yeah.
And I'm going to see if I can't repeat it here because I think you'll get a kick out of it. And he's like, it starts, sit down and buckle up and prepare for the most amazing report in the history of academia. I just got done reading. I'm going to say, it was like, you know, here's a topic that I didn't think anything about, but let me tell you, I just got done with 2 hours of reading, and I'm going to give the most interesting thing you've ever heard. Like, it's like, dude, you wrote this the night before it was due.
Yeah.
I have a suspicion it's not going to be the most interesting paper ever.
Somebody told me that, I'd be like, is that a challenge?
That's hilarious, man.
I'm going to spend the next 30 minutes warping your entire sensibility of how the universe works. Let's go.
That's hilarious. So it's 9, and I've got to finish some stuff in the morning. Dude, thanks for hanging out.
Yeah, no problem. It's fun.
So, internet, check this out. Look at the Patreon link. You can help make the dream happen for as little as $1 a month. Or you can buy our comics for as little as $1. We've even got an album, an EP of chiptune music, with a free digital version of the amazing webcomic story Into the Wild Blue Internet featuring Game Boy. So there you go. And that's only $3 for a 4-song EP and a e-comic. Come on.
It's a pretty good deal.
That's a decent deal. So anyway, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Appreciate you guys in the chat, giving us stuff to talk about. And until they come for our guns and our comics, have a good one, guys. So, bye.